At day, the streets of Moscow are bright and lively, but at night, in the misty and shadowy streets, lurks the crooked faces of strangers who show no truth. Dan Forrester, private investigator, sits in his chair eating a bowl of dry cereal.
Gee, Dan, have you heard the news today?
No.
Any plans for today?
Very busy, Barry.
You're never busy. You start something like that song and you never finish it. What's on the table?
Making model volcanoes for the kids at school.
That's brilliant, Dan. How'd you make it?
Well, I visited Binco, where I bought some bitop sodium bicarbonate, known for its particular fizz. I had some leftover vinegar from that party in the cupboard, and I used an old toilet paper tube and surrounded it with paper mache.
That's cool. Gee, I think that's the door, Dan.
Your perception amazes me. No one's here.
Oh, come in. Have a crumpet. There's some tea.
A man with a grubby face wearing an undersized blue train uniform walked in. If he were a food, he'd be a type of grapefruit that sat in the cupboard for far too long.
So what brings you to Moscow, Mr.
McMahum, Pierce McMahum.
Let me guess, you're a mathematician, right?
No, judging by his outfit, he's a flight attendant.
Gentlemen, I'm a railway engineer. You see, I had this package I had to deliver on the outline.
I know this one. It was a box of chocolates.
No, it was...
Don't tell me it was a box of strobe lights, for a party.
Let the man explain, Barry.
Well, the box was stolen. I had to deliver it to Sergei Markov at the Belaruski station. And when I opened up the safe, it wasn't there. I told him it was on the next train to go by some time.
So, you want me to find your box?
Yeah, that would be really helpful.
Yes, an adventure. I'll do it. I'll go get the typewriter.
Would you mind telling me the whole story?
I was loading it into boxcar number 4.
Skip forward a little bit.
I saw the indicator switch to red, and I slowed the train down to a stop, waiting for a dispatch. After a few minutes of sitting there, a car was sitting there for a while, and then suddenly took off.
Go back a little bit.
I was finishing my bologna sandwich.
Did you have grapefruit?
No, I don't care much for grapefruit.
If Mr. McMahum were a food, he'd be a bologna sandwich that sat in the cupboard for far too long. Where were you at?
Just north of L.A.
Excellent. Barry?
What?
Time to venture off into the shadows. Mr. McMahum, lock the doors when you leave.
Will our heroes make it to LA and solve the case, or will they get stuck on 990? Stay tuned for more of this exciting adventure of Forrester and Thimble. This program was brought to you by Ms. Finch's Grapefruit Wine, the best wine north of I-90 and below the Canadian border. Pour yourself a glass of Ms. Finch's and wake up at a different location tomorrow. Ms. Finch's. If it's not grapefruit, it's not Ms. Finch's. We return with our heroes, who spent 10 minutes investigating the case and then turned their attention to a local pub.
Dan, what's the first place we need to investigate?
The bottom of this whiskey bottle.
The next day, our heroes were back on track and heading up the L line, where they found an abandoned car next to the train signal.
Look, Dan, there's a note on the seat.
Quiet, Barry. Sure enough, it was a crumpled up note, and written on the top of the note was the name, the Cleverly Hills Hotel.
The note says, buy a 1-gallon jug and a half-gallon jug of milk and a box of Don Diego cigars at checkout number 3 of the Albert & Sons grocery store. You will receive the item instead. Signed, GWB.
So our heroes dashed over to the Albert & Sons grocery store and then skipped directly to checkout number 3.
We've got some questions for you. What do you know about a certain GWB?
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking
Tell me about the item.
What item?
Tough guy, eh? How are we going to get information out of you?
Well, say hello to my Colt Python 357 Magnum CTG with an 8-inch barrel and a blue finishing scope.
That can't be. Just put that thing away.
It turned out that the clerk didn't know anything. So we ventured off instead to the Cleverly Hills Hotel.
Bing dong.
Ding!
Can I help you, fellas?
Do you have anyone here with the initials GWB?
Let me check the books. Ah, yes, it seems we have 2. Former President George W. Bush, as well as railroad tycoon Grigory W. Barkov.
Of course, the second one sounds Russian.
What floor is Mr. Barkov on?
He's in suite number 7, on the 13th floor.
Let's go.
Barry, put the gun away. We'll go in cold.
You know...
Stop. We walked over to suite number 7 and turned the doorknob and kicked it in and yelled, DFPI, don't move.
DFPI?
Dan Forrester, private investigator.
Gee, no one's here.
I'm going to take position in the closet and wait till he returns.
No, I think he left. I'm going to go see if my woodland friends have any leads.
You do that, Barry. I stayed there. It seemed like forever. I became weary as I sat in the cramped closet. Suddenly, the door opened slowly and a small figure emerged into the room. Immediately, I attacked it.
Dan, stop! It's me!
Oh, did you get any leads?
Mr. Squeaks says that GWB is leaving town in an hour at the LA airport.
Quick, not a moment to lose. Into the shadows.
Flight number 10053 to Yekaterinburg, now boarding at Terminal 3 at the East Gate.
Flight number 10053 to Yekaterinburg, now boarding at Terminal 3 at the East Gate.
That's the one.
I'll rip them apart! There's blood everywhere!
Oh, it's Miss Finch's grapefruit wine. Best floor cleaner anywhere.
This is the Department of Homeland Security. Please remain calm and proceed to the nearest exit. Oh, and don't approach anyone in there.
Get down,
Nobody move, but get to the nearest exit.
Squad team noise there.
Hey, Tar, she's got a bomb.
I see him!
Sure enough, there was a man dressed in traditional Russian clothing. He was comparable to a peppermint candy cane. He headed towards that thing that connects the airport to the plane.
You mean the jetaway?
Let's move! He saw us coming and panicked. That's when he hit his head on the top of that low jetway. We rushed up to the man and found a glossy black box in his briefcase.
Golly, that's another case solved for Dan Forrester, private eye.
The Department of Homeland Security finally arrived on the scene.
Been looking for this guy for a long time now. I'm glad you boys got him.
Barry and I took the next flight back to Moscow, where we gave the poor engineer his box back.
Oh my, if it weren't for you guys, I would have lost my job. I would have had to work at the public library.
Golly, what's in the box, mister?
Well, take a look.
Oh.
Hank got one of those at my house.
At day, the streets of Moscow are bright and lively, but at night, in the misty and shadowy streets, lurks the crooked faces of strangers who show no truth. Dan Forrester, private investigator.